How's it going, real dealers? It's your man Phil Hall, and before we begin today's podcast, I want to give a huge shout out to our peeps over at Men's Trends. Men's Trends is a new clothing line on the market that specializes in the best workout attire for your next quarantine workout or gym workout wherever you are. Make sure to go follow them on Instagram at Men's Trends and also check out their line on menstrends.com. Make sure to use our code The Real Deal for you to get 25% off on your next purchase. Stay fit, stay strong, and always keep it real. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. How's it going, real dealers? It is your man, Phil Hall. Welcome to the Real Deal Bros podcast. And today I have a very special guest with me. She is currently a professional softball player. She also played softball and also ran track at the University of California, Berkeley, and has played softball in countries such as Switzerland, New Zealand, and even here in the United States. And she is also a fitness enthusiast and also a singer. Everybody, I'd like to welcome to the show, Kayla Taylor.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Oh, Kayla, it's been about a minute since the last time we talked. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's been at least like 4, 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, just about. Yeah. So story of how me and Kayla met. I was actually at back when I was playing baseball in high school. Me and my team, we went to see a baseball game at Cal, and Kayla was sitting over on the hillside of the baseball game, and I actually went up to talk to her because I think I realized that she was on the softball team, and yeah, and she I actually asked her for some advice on recruiting, because I was playing ball in high school, and I wanted to get some recruiting advice from a already known college athlete, and I guess we kind of been friends ever since, and yeah, she's very you know presence on social media and also presence in the softball world. And it's definitely glad to have her on. So, Kayla, so far, like how have things been going? Like just give everybody an update on what you've been up to, and yeah, just
Man, quarantine has been wild.
tell me about it.
Yeah, especially as an athlete, got to stay accountable with your workouts. For me, I've just been staying ready, obviously, with um, my whole contract and everything. Things have kind of been either at a standstill or frozen just because their federations aren't open yet, or allowing their softball programs to start practicing yet. So I have a couple of teams that are interested. I also recently just tried out for another MPF team in California, California Promotion. It was a really cool tryout. I met a lot of former players that I played against, as well as players that I played with or against in my travel softball teams
Oh
back
wow.
when I was 14 years old. So it was really cool. It was kind of like a reunion. Um, Being able to just try out for a team that is so close to home was an opportunity of a lifetime. Um, yeah, I was super excited when I found out that there was going to be a professional team in California. But obviously, given the pandemic, there's really nothing going on right now. Athletes are kind of at a standstill, like I said, and really it's about just staying ready, staying accountable for when everything does open back up and these contracts and these teams start to, give us another shot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all that is great. I'm glad you still keep going with the professional softball, and yeah, definitely. As a sports fan, also, I'm somebody that enjoys watching sports. Like that's has a future in sports. So studied sports management at St. John's, and even as a student that goes to school to study sports, yeah, I definitely seen the impact that COVID-19 has had on just the sports realm. Like every sport is right now kind of at a standstill and just on hold. And yeah, I know, as an professional athlete yourself, I always wondered, because like, again, like that is still a job to people. Like people will look at professional athletes and they'll say, oh yeah, they're athletes that work about like 3 hours a day or 3 hour, like, or 3 hours each week. And, but I feel like it's more than that, they're athletes, even though they still have these kind of like elaborate and like extravagant lifestyles, they still are human. They still have health issues. They still have to pay bills. They still have to put food on the
Yeah,
table for
real
those that have
people.
families.
We're not superheroes.
Yeah.
I like to wish we were, but yeah, we're still people.
Yeah, but I guess I kind of get into like just about the impact of professional softball and COVID-19 later on the show. But I guess for people that don't really know you as well, maybe you could give us a background on how you started playing sports. Because from knowing you, I know you have like a very large athletic background. Being a two-sport athlete in college, and just and also being a two-sport athlete and even in high school. And you can give everybody an update of how you got into sports and yeah, just kind of tell your life story a little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, I was kind of a very hyper active child. You couldn't make me sit down much. So my parents put me in three sports like right away. I believe I was like maybe like 5, 6, or 7 going into these sports, just to keep me busy. Keep my energy pumping. Just because I also played soccer and I played softball at a young age. Um, what I can remember from playing those sports is that it was like I was very gifted in all of them because I was so competitive. So I kept playing basketball until about my sophomore year of high school, just because my if I am, let's just say, if my height is restricting me from becoming a better basketball athlete, then I may need to, hang up uh, those shoes
Mhm.
and possibly think about, um, you know, I got invited to go play in Holland when I was 10.
Oh wow.
Um, and unfortunately, my parents at the time, or really my mom, because my dad was deployed a lot. So
Mm.
uh, the majority of my life, he did coach me, but he was gone all the time.
Mm.
So my mom decided that it wasn't an opportunity that they could afford. And I also decided to stop playing soccer at that age, even though I was fairly good, because I was playing. Well, with soccer, sometimes you play with people that are way older than you, like a couple years older than you. And especially in my hometown, everybody kind of knew who I was as an athlete. And some people kind of criticized me given the fact that I was such a good athlete. So there was a lot of politics
Mm.
um, in the place where I came from. So soccer ended a little bit too early. I honestly think that I probably could have gone to college for soccer. I was really passionate about soccer, but it came to an unfortunate circumstance of not making a team based off of politics. And because of the relationship that that coach had against my mom. So it was
Oh.
just, yeah, there was a lot of things going on. My mom, it was a very hardcore, very independent woman that was well known in the community where I lived in SoCal. So it was kind of like, you either liked my mom or you didn't. And
Mm.
sometimes if you didn't, it came back to bite me. So it was fine. But with softball, I can say that I've played that game the longest. Um, I wanted to play more sports, but it was kind of more of being realistic to being competitive in the sports that I'm good at. I always loved to play games. Like, I hated practice. Whenever I would have to, whenever my parents would tell me, okay, like, we're going to practice, I would just have the biggest attitude. I was like, man, like, when are the games? Like, I'm trying to be competitive in the games, like practice, and
Like
also,
Allen Iverson, like practice, like.
yeah, yeah. Being coached by your parents too can drain you out. So
Mm.
I was also like coached by my mom and my dad. So it just seemed like they were way harder on me, or my coaches were harder on me in practice. But then when it got to the games, they know that Kayla's gonna compete. She doesn't have a problem with getting motivated for games and everything. So Yeah, at a really young age, I kind of developed my competitiveness for wanting to win or wanting to succeed for myself. Um, which kind of humbled me because I was never a player that like was all in your face if we won. Like
Mm,
I was very respectful. I was respectful of the other team. I just had this sense of like if we lost, it wasn't an accomplishment for me, but it was something to learn from.
mm,
And my parents really instilled that in me that like, yeah, you lost. Yeah, you may have not done what you thought was your best, but there's always opportunity to get better. So, um, yeah, that's probably a little bit of the back end of my sports coming up as a kid. Um, I didn't start running track until my freshman year of high school. I
mm,
know a lot of people start early with that. I know there was a lot of like club running teams and stuff like that, like Time Machine, and a lot of places in LA that had these like running clubs and everything that are like super famous. I never did any of that. I honestly like jumped into that sport with absolutely no idea if I was going to do well or not. But like I said, in between the ears, I'm a competitive person, so I didn't necessarily take like the sport lightly. Like I made it a competition against myself and my peers of who I was running with. And it seemed like that ended up being successful in the long run just because I ended up just from running 4 years, I ended up going to state. So it was just something that was so crazy to me because, my goddad got me into it. He was like, hey, like, you should run, you're fast. And I was like, I don't know, like track is like different. And really people don't understand that track is so different. It's not just running. There's actually like a technique to running. And that was something that like I had to try and master just because I didn't know that there was like any type of technique when it comes to running. So when I like train my kids, I actually do teach them the proper mechanics of running because in any type of sport, you don't want to look goofy.
mm.
You can have a little bit of goofiness to you, but as long as we have the right form, then we're doing all right. So
Yeah, yeah, I can say that myself. Yeah, I ran track a bit growing up, and I was actually really before I got into baseball, and yeah, like my mom actually coached me during track, and yeah, there is a lot of technique that goes with it. It's not just running and turning laps. You also know it's just about form and athleticism, and yeah, all that is an art, and all that does need to be mastered. But yeah, it definitely sounds like you have a very large athletic background. You have this God-given talent of
yeah.
athleticism, and yeah, and I think that really led you to become that Division 1 athlete. So I think we could kind of go into how was the recruiting process like for you when you were deciding on what college you were going to, or like when did you know, or when did you know that you had a chance to play sports in college?
Um, so I didn't start taking sports seriously until about 12 years old.
Hmm.
The thing with softball, back when I was playing, it's a little bit different now. You can verbally commit by the age of 13.
Hmm.
So when I started playing for my travel ball team for softball, the Corona Angels, um, our head coach, Marty Tyson, really instilled in us that, you know, I'm going to help you get to where you want to be, regardless of where it's at. And you're going to get a scholarship, but you got to prove to me that you deserve that scholarship from whatever school that's interested in you. So he really instilled that even heightened competitiveness in me because I was like, oh, so now I got to prove that in order to get to college and for college to be paid for, like I have to show these schools that I'm worth betting on basically because scholarships are worth money and some scholarships are less or more than others, and I always wanted to be that one that got a full ride scholarship to help out my parents because I felt like my parents have done so much for me that they don't deserve to be in debt because of me. you
Mhm.
know, because I knew that they had their own expenses. So um, yeah, so when I started playing for the Corona Angels, that kind of kicked me in the butt a little bit. I was like, okay, softball's not necessarily like always fun. Like now I have to be focused, serious, and make sure that when I go to like showcases or any competitive games that I got to prove to everybody out there on that field that I deserve to go to a school. Um, so back when I was like 13, I remembered that about, I would say like 4 to 5 people on my team were already verbally committed. Some ranged to being eighth graders to being freshmen in high school. And at the time, I was a baby freshman, like just going in probably into the fall. Um, and I was kind of like, oh wow, like there's girls that are committing, there's girls getting letters. Like I want to do that. I want to get letters. Like I want to get seen, and I want a verbal too, because I was always afraid of being that girl that burbled like basically right when they were about to sign their senior year. It was something that I was afraid of. It wasn't necessarily something that I didn't respect, because there's so many good players that end up committing later. But I had like an anxiety that like I need to commit, I need to be verbal like before I'm a sophomore in high school, like this has to happen. So it ended up being this one showcase that I was in 14U, so I was in 14 and under, and I went to a showcase that was an 18 and under showcase. So everybody knows that if you go to a showcase that you're gonna see girls that are going into college like within like 3 to 6 months, and you're also gonna see a whole bunch of college coaches. We're talking about like between 50 to 100 college coaches at once sometimes, just because these coaches, they go to these showcases so that they can see what they like, or see the girls that they've already either verbally committed or they're already signed. So it's kind of like a stage where it's like, hey, like show what you got. And, if you mess up, everybody saw. And then if you do great, also everybody saw. So it wasn't until I think it was like my second game where there was about, I would say, 15 college coaches there. And I was so nervous. Mind you, I was playing on the 18U team as a 14-year-old. So I was playing with girls that are, all Americans like now. After their college career, they were all Americans. They played on the USA team. These were girls that were, high caliber athletes. And I literally was like, wow, like I'm playing with these girls. Like this girl's going to Washington. This girl's going to UCLA. This girl is going here, going there. So I was nervous. I was like, the fact that I'm even playing with these girls, like I gotta, show what I got. Um, and prove to my travel ball coach that like I'm ready, to play at the level that I need to play at. Because when you do come into college, you are playing against people who are 3 to 4 years older than you. So you have to be able to figure out if you're going to be that freshman that starts, or if you're going to be that freshman that kind of like goes throughout their season and they don't really get to start, don't really get to play, and they may need a year to, get acclimated, and then maybe they'll play their sophomore year. So I kind of took that opportunity in that moment to be like, okay, like this is do or die. Like this is how I'm going to get a scholarship, or I'm going to basically piss on myself in front of all these college coaches. So I ended up having a day that day. I went like 2 for 3. I had 2 stolen bases, a couple crazy catches in the outfield. I remember that it was one of the best games that I've ever had in my entire life. And that was when Cal saw me and they're like, dude, like this girl is raw. Like we need her. And she's 14. Like we got to get her now
Wait. So
because
Cal was
that's
looking at you
how,
when you were 14.
yes. Yeah.
Wow.
I was young.
Hmm.
So, it was very nerve wracking to me just because, Cal ended up being my first offer and I took it.
Oh wow.
Not a lot of athletes take their first offer, but for me, I kind of wanted to stay in California regardless, going to school. And when, Cal offered me, I was like, yep, I'm ready. Like, I want to go to Cal, like, a done deal. Like, I don't want to go anywhere else. And that's crazy because right when I verbal, that's when every letter started pouring in. And I was like, dang, this is crazy. Like, what if, like, I could have went here, I could have went there, I could have went there. I was just like so ecstatic because I was like, wow, like I really, mean something to these schools, like as an athlete. And it really, humbled me because I was like, wow, you know, like having verbaled early, like made it made sense for me to be like, I have to be better. Like I have to do better, regardless if I'm verbal already. Like I need to continue to become that athlete that doesn't peak. And that was also one thing that I was afraid of, was peaking, because sometimes, certain athletes, they get to a certain age or they get to a certain, threshold where they just can't do anymore. And, I didn't want to be that type of athlete. So, even when I verbaled, I still worked hard. I worked hard in school because school wasn't necessarily like my biggest thing. I was a jock. Like I did sports. I was good at sports. So when it came to school and they're like, hey, like you have to get a certain GPA by your senior year, I was like, oh shoot, okay, well,
Yeah.
then I gotta start getting A's then.
Mhm.
Um,
It,
so yeah, it was really cool, being so young to have already made that big decision to where I was gonna go. But that's just how softball was back then. I know, they've, set the age to 16 now, so you can't verbal until you're 16. Just for, I think, for the safety of athletes, just because it's like, when you're 14 years old, you don't know what you want.
right.
And some people, make the wrong decisions for the wrong reasons. And especially when you're 14, you're playing for your parents. Sometimes you're not playing for yourself. And sometimes these girls make these decisions, for their parents instead of for themselves. So I'm appreciative that they've changed, the, recruitment rule to 16, just because now these girls can be mature and know that their decision that they're making, is right for them. Because, for me, I didn't get good in track until about my like junior year of high school. And then I started getting letters my junior year from colleges in track. So I kind of had this in my head, like, dang, like, what if I waited? Like, could I have went to like UCLA for track, or could I have went to, like Oregon? Like I was kind of like shocked because I was always that girl that, oh, like Kayla's going to Cal, like she's not worried about where she's going to school. But I also was like, dang, like I got all these offers from all these different schools. I could have went somewhere, but I decided to stick with my gut and honestly be loyal, because, I feel like it's different than like guys sports, because I feel like guys, like they'll decommit right away. They'll be like, oh yep,
Yeah.
I'm committed to Ohio State, but I just decommitted and now I'm going to like Alabama or something like that. Like I feel like girls don't have that, I don't know, like cockiness in a way. Like we're very like straight to the point, like, okay, you offer me, I'm staying here, I'm going here.
Hmm.
Because I've, heard of some athletes where, they've committed to like a certain university and then, that coach got fired, and, that person that was on a full ride or was on a scholarship, that new coach that comes in decides not to give them that promised kind of scholarship. And then sometimes you're just left in the mud as an athlete because the coach doesn't know you or has other athletes in mind that they want to give your scholarship away. So like this happens all the time. So it's almost like I feel like a lot of girls are way more loyal when it comes to sticking with one school than like just decommitting and going somewhere else and having like all these different options because, you know, like, well, I really only see it with like football and male sports, but it's very rare to see like a female like decommit and then like go to like another big school. So.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a lot about recruiting. So you probably already know about the future plan for college athletes to get paid. So what are your thoughts about that? About Division One athletes and also NCAA athletes getting paid in the future?
Oh man, I really wish that I
I
could
wish
get
you could get
paid.
those 4 years back, saying like, "Oh man, I
Yeah,
wish I could get paid."
yeah, that would be awesome. Um,
uh,
so I honestly think that there's so much money in this country that it it would be nice for athletes to be compensated. Um, the thing is that us as athletes in college, we are bringing the revenue in to the school as well as our athletic programs. So even if it's a very small amount of money that you get per game, um, we could treat it as like an hourly pay, you know, $25 a game, kind of like what umpires get. Umpires get like $40 a game or something like that. It's something very, you know, basic, but also very fair because it is a job. When we are in our respective universities, we not only have to excel in the classroom, but we also have to excel in our sports. So it's almost like having two full-time jobs and trying to make ends meet. Um, and it would just be nice for athletes to get compensated just because I know that me being in college, we got a certain stipend per month. And if depending on my rent situation of how expensive the costs were for me to live, sometimes I was pocketing money and sometimes I had to ask my mom for money every month. So I think it would just lessen that burden of, you know, financial instability just because, you know, us as athletes, especially coming in, if we never had a job before, it's kind of tough because we are dedicating so many hours to our sport that you know, it's tiresome and sometimes the per diem isn't enough and sometimes we are going home hungry and sometimes we don't have enough time or energy to make food or not enough food, you know, and our apartments or our dorms. So it would just make things a little bit easier. It's not necessarily, we're not asking for millions of dollars per athlete. Let's get that straight. Let's leave that to the baseball players and the basketball players and the football players. But it would just be nice to kind of be respected in a way that what you're doing and your dedication towards your sport is appreciated, and we want to go ahead and give you like a stipend on top of, you know, because there may be athletes that aren't on scholarship that are walk-ons. Like now they have an opportunity to make money and maybe this is going to help them, you know, spend some of their money to take care of their books or maybe their tuition or whatever. So I'm definitely for it. I've always been for it. So
yeah.
especially being in a female sport that doesn't necessarily make a whole bunch of money. So
Yeah, I would say, you know, I am for it. Like, yeah, I do believe that college athletes do need to be supported in some type of way because last year the NCAA made $1 billion off of March Madness alone, and you know, even if you add that in with the revenue that's being made in football and like all the other bigger sports, yeah, like I feel the students or the student athletes should be getting a slice of the pie, knowing that they're the product on the field. I mean, and like I hate to use the term product when I'm referring to athletes because again, they're not robots, like they're human. And like I advocate for that so much. I advocate the fact that athletes do deserve to be treated like normal people. and not so much as a machine, because an athlete can shut down at any moment. And
Exactly. Or get
once,
hurt.
right, and once they take off the uniform, and once they walk out the locker room, they're back to being another person in society. And
Hmm.
yeah, and I definitely am supporting the fact that college athletes should be paid. But on the other hand, I do believe that there are a few missing pieces to the puzzle as far as separation and money, because if you look at the differences in just a D1 landscape, there could be a guy playing basketball at Duke and be making over $1 million and like be notified as the next Zion Williamson. Or
Hmm.
if you go to a much smaller D1 school that plays in a smaller conference and probably plays at a college that doesn't get as much TV exposure as like a Pac-12 school or like an SEC school, you have
Yeah.
to figure out how that money is going to be divided. And even with recruiting, you have your
Yeah.
5-star walk-ons, your 5-star recruits, your 4-star recruits, your 3-star recruits, and your walk-ons. And I feel like there's probably going to be a little bit of friction in the locker room as far as separation of money, because the walk-on could be scoring, like have better stats than the 5-star recruit coming in, and the
Oh
walk-on
yeah.
are going to go to the athletic director saying, "Hey, I feel like I should be getting a raise on my stipend," or I don't know. I don't even know if it's going to be like a contract or be just
Hmm.
like an agreement for how much you get paid, or
Yeah,
if you
for
get
the
paid by,
fun.
yeah. And yeah, I feel like the NCAA should have have those aspects in place as far as separation and money, marketing. Should there be a set limit on how much athletes should be paid in their sport? And like again, I'm all for the idea, but I feel like you still need to fill in some unfilled holes as far as trying to get this plan through. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely glad that you definitely see some support in college athletes now with them being paid, because I definitely do agree with the fact on college athletes getting paid. So well, Morris, fast forward, you finished your 4 years in college at Cal,
Hmm.
graduated, done playing sports, and then you go into the life of being a professional softball player. So, what has that life been like as a professional softball player? Like, or what's the professional softball scene like, and what is a typical day in the life for a pro softball player?
Hmm. So the thing with me that I think is a little bit different with a lot of professional athletes is that I don't have an agent. I've always been my
Mm.
own agent. I know a lot of people either pay agents to, do like kind of like the dirty work for them or the extensive work for them. Um, I've always been very independent. So I've always, did the dirty work, got down to sending hundreds of emails to teams, basically stating why I deserve to be on their roster or to help their team. Um, the professional softball realm, especially internationally, is awesome. Um, the baseline requirements, especially for imports, is what they call people who are out of the country. There's kind of a limit to how many imports you can have per team just to make it a little bit fair. There are some teams out there that don't have imports, and then there's some that do. So it doesn't necessarily mean that like if you have imports, you have a better team, and that if you don't, then maybe you're stacked, but in your own country. But I could say for an American player that's played in the U.S. competitively and gone overseas to play professionally, I'm highly respected in that way. Just because as an outfielder, it's really hard to go and be like the import that everybody wants. Normally, when people are looking for professional athletes, they want pitchers, catchers, middle infielders, normally like shortstops or second basemen. Um, Outfield is not necessarily a priority that a lot of these teams are looking for. Um, and fortunate enough, I have my stats to back me up enough. So,
Numbers don't lie.
so when, yeah, so yeah, numbers don't lie. Um, so I sent, all these teams my stats, um, And obviously coming from a Pac-12 school, that's kind of like a ding, 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 like, okay, like we may use her for sure. But yeah, being an outfielder and trying to kind of sell myself to other teams, especially by myself, was kind of difficult. But I always seemed to catch somebody's eye, given my offensive stats. So yeah, I love playing overseas. I love the fact that they're trying to learn and grow with the game,
Mm.
knowing and respecting us that play here in the U.S. and how competitive we make the game. Because we do take it so seriously that sometimes, like, you know, there have been times where they're like, Kayla, like, chill out, it's just a game. And it's just like my nature, like I'm so competitive, like, you know, I could get like upset about a play or mad about an at bat, but still be able to, you know, pick myself up and get ready for the next rep or the next opportunity. So, but, you know, being a professional athlete has definitely been a great experience, just because I felt like I didn't peak. Like I said before, there's some athletes that peak, and I just felt like I haven't peaked yet. So I wanted to go professional. I always wanted to be a professional athlete since I was a little girl. Yeah, I could probably look at some old, like, little cute third grader dream write up saying, I want to be a professional athlete. You know what I mean? So it was always a dream of mine. And the fact that I've gotten to live it out for so long, with the opportunities that I've had for the past 3 years, it's been a blessing because, you know, my body's still holding up. I'm still very athletic given my age. So it's kind of like, why not just push it until we can't push it no more?
Yeah, that's always the mindset for professional athletes. And
Mhm.
like, well, I mean, to ask you. So, as far as softball goes, because I know for baseball, traditionally, when when a player finishes high school or when he's done playing in college, he gets drafted to a pro team. So, in softball, I'm not sure if it's like that in overseas, but in the United States, is there like a set draft for softball players, or how does that work?
Yeah. So the draft is basically the MPF, like I was saying before. The MPF is kind of like our MLB for softball.
Hmm.
Um, Not a lot of players get drafted. You know, there's hundreds of baseball players that get drafted for the MLB. I believe there's about 6 to 7 rounds, and there's about 7 picks. So it's like 6 to 7 picks. So
Like,
mind
how
you, this
many
is
teams are in the league?
yeah. So right now, I believe there's about 4 to 5 in the league, but
Hmm.
some of them are international. So you have the Eagles, which is a team in China. You have the Peppers, which is in Australia. You have Canadian Wild, and then you have um, the Scrap Bear Dogs. USSSA Pride is their own separate organization, but they used to be part of the MPF, but they branched off. So that's another pro team. And then California Commotion that just came up. But a lot of professional softball used to be very more popular and more teams back then, like back in like the 80s. And since then, a lot of teams have had to fold based off of the funds and the access to, you know, donors and money in the sport. And kind of like, you know, is softball really a monetary sport, which it
Hmm.
is,
So
because
it
there's a
almost
whole bunch of people watching the College World Series when it
yeah.
comes on.
So it almost kind of sounds like actually like have you seen the movie A League of Their Own?
Hmm.
Yeah, so like it almost kind of sounds like the pro softball leagues that you mentioned. It kind of did have that sort of aspect as like the All American Professional Girls Baseball League. But I guess with since there are a lot more investors in sports nowadays, like I feel like there are some more people willing to invest in these smaller leagues and also try to get them more exposure to a national audience. I don't know.
Yeah.
You probably you can probably say different about that, but like are there any people like what's the fan base like for the NPF?
Couldn't tell you. I've been trying to get into the MPF for 3 years. I think that there's a lot of politics involved in the MPF just because it's like you only have about 50 girls going in to play professional softball when there's over hundreds of girls who are in so many different divisions that are athletes. Like they
Mm.
are raw. They deserve to play at the professional level. And some of these coaches don't really see that. Um, so that's why there is an international opportunity for these girls to be able to go and play overseas if they don't necessarily feel like becoming a professional athlete in their own country is attainable. I mean, the thing with softball is that it's kind of like, you know, once you're done, you're kind of done.
Mm.
So in order for you to play professionally, it kind of takes that mindset of I want to play and I'm going to do whatever it is that I can to show or to prove to others that I'm willing to be taking a chance on, you know what I mean? So for me, I went to tryouts for these teams and it always ended up being a decision of, oh, we don't have enough money.
Mm.
So because they've already had a team roster and that they're putting out these tryouts to kind of, you know, add a couple people on their teams. And it always seemed like I made it through the tryout process, made it to the practice with the team. And then it would come to a decision whether I deserve money or not. And it was kind of like, oh, like we invested too much money in this one player, or we've already her contract already was like promised this amount of money and this is that. So it's very political in my opinion. Just because there's so many girls that are so talented and gifted in the sport, and that there should be just like how the MLB is kind of sectioned out, there should be that type of scheme for softball, but it just seems like there's not enough people that really want to invest.
Hmm. Yeah. Like, so what would you say a day in the life is like for a softball player? Because I heard you mention of like the money situation that goes on with softball. And like I don't want to assume anything, but there's probably not as much money. I feel like the softball players that play in these pro leagues, they're kind of living off of like a minor league salary. So do you know any players that have had to, you know, find other jobs to compensate for the cost of living, or how does that
Oh yeah, you
transfer?
can't. Yeah, the only person that I think is living their best life is Monica Abbott.
Hmm.
She's a pitcher. She's making bank.
Wait, did she play at Cal or?
No, she's the face. She's like the face of USA softball.
Hmm.
She was a pitcher, and she is probably one of the most well-known names behind, you know, like Jenny Finch,
Mm-hmm.
that has completely, you know, she's like what softball is. You know what I mean? So when it comes to that, out of one person that is making the most money out of like everybody else, it's very slim. Really, endorsements is how you make your money. So we're talking about, you know, commercials, deals with Nike or Adidas or New Balance. That's kind of like where you make your money when it comes to being a professional softball player. On the revenue side, it's not something that you can live off of, or at least live comfortably. I know plenty of professional softball players that have regular jobs, or that have jobs within softball that isn't necessarily affiliated with the professional league. But, you know, obviously their name can speak for themselves when it comes to a lot of these girls that want to go to their camps or want to get lessons by them.
Mm.
So it's really about selling yourself and understanding and knowing the type of player that you are, because somebody may think that you are worth, teaching their kid fundamentals regardless of where you went to school, if you're a professional athlete or not. It's really about sometimes what other people perceive your worth as. But yeah, I don't necessarily think that a one out of thousands of people who have probably played softball professionally that are making a living off of, being a professional softball player, it just makes it seem like, it's some may think that it's like a temporary job, and it's not something that they can live after they have retired, that they can, sustain their lifestyle with the salary that they're making playing softball.
I see. Yeah. So it feels like if you get the same amount of exposure as, say like a Mike Trout or kind of like a Candace Parker, it's not going to still compensate for just, like you saw the status of being a professional athlete, but at times, on the financial side, it almost feels like with all the endorsements and the team contracts, it's not, it's kind of different from, other sports, or just a different level of the sport. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like, that always is something to think about, knowing that, there are women that do play professional sports. And, I feel like that, like with them having a professional sports title, they should be, or should receive the same salary as, other professional athletes. Well, I mentioned, male athletes, but I do think that with all the money, because this is a $1 billion business. I mean, I've learned that from my freshman year at St. John's, taking sports management classes, that there is a lot of money that can be invested in sports. It's just that, I feel like it's, with just the gender differential in our country, women still fall by the wayside as far as, getting a major contract, or having their name more exposed to the national audience. And, I feel like that is something that can change in the future for women in sports, because I feel like female athletes should be valued just as much as male athletes are. That's just my opinion.
Oh yeah, we preach to the choir.
Yeah.
But
Well,
until we can fix that on the government side, I don't think sports is really going to fault. Like it really isn't going to falter to the whole idea of like everybody should get paid the same, or like female athletes should get paid this or whatever. Because I mean, you could just look at the USA soccer team. The whole scandal.
Oh, yeah,
Well, not scandal, but the whole ordeal with the USA soccer team for being number one in the world, and the men didn't even do half as well, but they still got paid more than they did when they won the World Cup.
they didn't even make the last World Cup, and they're still getting paid.
Yeah, yeah, that just goes to show how and their ratings were really high as well. So it's like, not only do we have a lot of people watching us, but we also are winning. So why does that make a difference to just because the male soccer team is the male soccer team, the women's soccer team is going to get paid XYZ compared to men? But that's a whole nother beast, which, like I said, until our government has some type of switch in democracy, or a change in heart to their idolization of like people being equal, which doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon, until there's a switch in that aspect. I'm just gonna have to live with what we live with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Wait, so what part of California did you say you were from?
I'm from Southern California. It's called Temecula.
Temecula. I was wondering, because there's actually a female NASCAR driver that's coming up. Have you heard of Haley Deegan? She's actually from Temecula.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's lit. No, I haven't heard of her, but I'll definitely do more research.
Yeah, definitely check her out. Yeah, she's a female NASCAR driver that's coming up through the rankings. Very popular. Like, even though like she's actually only 18 years old, and she's
Oh,
already racing
raw.
like some of the top levels in NASCAR. And
Oh wow.
yeah, because well, yeah, when I found that she was from Temecula, I was like, wait a minute, isn't Kayla from there? And like, yeah, I feel like
Yeah,
that
I
would be
am
pretty
from
cool.
Temecula.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people joke that say that I have stated that I'm from San Diego, but I was born in San Diego and I grew up in Temecula.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. But you still consider Temecula your hometown, though.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So, as far as like all the countries you played softball in, like I looked at your bio and you said you played professional softball in countries like Switzerland, New Zealand, even in some parts of the United States. Um, sorry, I'm looking at my notebook down here just 'cause I wrote the questions down. So,
Okay.
yeah, of all the countries you played softball in, which one was your favorite country to play
So I would rank it. Basically, I would rank it like this. Switzerland and New Zealand are tied for first, and then Alabama was second.
in?
um, both countries were absolutely beautiful, absolutely clean. Um, it's just something for a girl like my age when, just coming out of college and being very wide eyed and not ever, being out of the country before. Being able to go to these type of countries was just so dope. When I mean clean, we're talking about just clean air, um, clean food. It was just like I felt like I was losing weight eating food in these
Mm.
places. It's just crazy how it's just such a different lifestyle in these countries, and I absolutely loved playing there. The atmosphere was great.
How
The
was the
teams were
like
great.
how was the competition in those countries?
The competition, yeah. So the competition was pretty like leveled out. Um, if you're fortunate enough to get on like a team where like it's kind of high caliber, um, then you're kind of just going back to, okay, like I'm playing in college. But then there are some teams where you have to kind of train your team to understanding that you can get better in the game. You're not just stagnant, because they're not, they're doing these teams are kind of playing the game as more of like extracurricular, as like physical education, you know what I mean, outside of their work life, like their real lives. So um, for us, it's our job, and really it's our job to continue to develop, you know a type of savvy for them with the game, because we have played it so long. And um, then our teams get better, you know what I mean, just like when you practice something for so long that it's going to end up becoming a routine. So um, I emphasized a lot of practices and making sure that like mechanics were right with certain individuals and helping out in coaching. So
Hmm.
it's almost like when I went overseas, I was a coach and a player.
Oh
So I
wow,
was fortunate enough to do that. Yeah.
that's cool. Would you say, like I'm pretty sure you had like players from other countries on those teams. Like, was like how did you ever get along with them? Like, was there ever like a language barrier? Like, did you even have to learn the language like when you were playing in Switzerland,
Yeah.
or say if you were playing another country against like a foreign competitor, and like say like because I know in
Yeah.
baseball, like say you get on first base and single, and like they based in softball or baseball they say that first base is the most conversational part of the field. So
Hmm.
like, I don't know, like how was that like? Did you was it a culture shock or did you have to learn the language at all?
Yeah. Culture shock for me for sure, because obviously like when I first went to Switzerland, I've never been outside of the country.
Hmm.
Um, So culture shock for sure. Language barrier, no. Like Switzerland, they actually speak English, really, really good English. And
Yeah.
then in New Zealand, they speak English.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
not much of a language barrier. I would say the difficult, most difficult experience that I ever had to endure where I did feel like very, very lost was I was a pickup player for a Polish team. It was called the Winners' Cup. It was a championship in Naples, and I decided to be a pickup player for a Polish team. And mind you, they I don't even know the actual language that they speak, but I was completely lost. I was just like, I would kind of like wait because there was this one girl that didn't speak English at all, and like they were just speaking their native language to her, and then it was kind of like they were translating for her what I said. So I was kind of like at a loss for words because like, dang, bro, like I have no idea. I can't even comprehend what you guys are saying at all. So it was to a point where like, you know, some of the games I was very silent. But you know, like I said, I'm a very outgoing, bubbly person. So like there were some like chants that I learned that was Polish, and then there was some chants that I learned that were Swiss German, which is what they speak over there in Switzerland. Like I was, you know, adapting to the culture and not being so like closed off or standoffish and being like, oh, like, well, I'm from America and I don't know what they're talking about type stuff. Like I wanted to learn and build like a relationship to where like if I needed to like speak something that I knew how to be like receptive towards people. I always get along with everybody. I don't necessarily think that anybody can say that they've ever not liked me, like as a player per se, because I'm very loud. I'm very energetic. I can be extra at times, very extra. But
I mean, every player, every
yeah,
player had a moment of being
I'm memorable. There's a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, I miss your loud voice. You know what I mean? Or I miss your enthusiasm. So it's not, I never really like had beef with people because I don't know. I'm not that type of person. Because like I said, I'm a very like humble athlete. Like I don't walk around like I'm hot shit. I know that I know the player that I am, but I don't like walk around like I'm the best or I've peaked. Like I still am learning the game now because I'm starting to take hitting a little bit more seriously instead of slapping. So yeah, and I've developed some strength that I never had, especially in college. So yeah, like,
I've seen you play before, and yeah, I did notice that you were like that lead off slap hitter, just get on base and use your speed. And of course,
exactly.
the speed coming from track, yeah, it's like it's a particular play style, and I don't know. I feel like I could go more into that, because I know with softball and baseball, it's starting to become more of a game where power is more emphasized. There's not, like back in the day when the game was first created, like back in the dead ball era, back when like before Babe Ruth became known. Baseball has always been like a game of technique, just like place the ball wherever you could find a hole. But I feel like nowadays everybody's just trying to hit over the fence, and
Yeah.
just knowing you never really were like a huge power hitter coming up. So do you think that's been kind of contradicting the game, how it's more of a power game than a just a technical game? Because with so many players wanting to hit for the fences, that also leads to more players striking out more and lower batting averages. They because
Yeah.
they're focused more on the power numbers. Like, do you think just the power aspect of the game, or the power aspect of hitting a baseball or a softball, has kind of been contradicting with the overall laws of physics with the game? Or what do you think?
Honestly, I think it's best to do both. Because just to bring a player of mine to perspective, that was my former teammate. She was a slapper, and she very low strikeout average, very low. And it seemed like she could place the ball, not even hit it hard, and still get on base. So I really do think that, yeah, it is contradictory, but if you can do both, then you have best of both worlds, because you don't necessarily have to hit a home run to get on base. You can bunt and get on base. You can hit it in the holes between, shortstop and third base, or up the middle, or even between first and second base, which I hit a lot of holes in between first and second if I got around the ball. But it's crazy that you get around the ball, you have a crappy swing, and oh, you're on first base. You know what I mean? It may have not been the prettiest hit that you've had, but you still have opportunity to get on base. So I do think that it is very essential to be able to kind of pinpoint and be strategic when you swing. And like, you don't have to hit a home run or a line drive. Like, just coming from a slapper's point of view, you should see how many bloop hits I've had. I've probably had 50 bloop hits that have been singles that are literally little baby pop-ups that go over the third baseman or shortstop's head, and I'm like, dang, that was a crappy hit, but hey, I'm on base.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's really like purpose of the game. I mean, there's 9 players in the lineup, and not everybody has to hit a home run. Sometimes you just gotta make the first base. And
exactly.
I guess I would say for myself, the type of player that I was, I don't know, I can't really remember doing much thing. Like, I was like, when I was playing, I was a pitcher. I was also a first baseman. Even though, like, technically first basemen are usually like strongest guys on the team. I got muscle, but I never really like had the power, coming up. Like I really, the type of hitter that I trained myself to become was like I wanted to have like a high batting average. I wanted to have like a Tony Gwynn type batting average.
Mm-hmm.
And really, the way that I trained and the way that I hit, I focused on like my goal every time I stepped up to the plate was just square the ball up the best way you can. If you know a fastball is coming, just square it up, make solid contact. Yeah, definitely, look out for holes if you can, and if there's a guy on base, my goal every time when there was a guy on base, find some way to either move that guy over or drive him in. And I feel like, nowadays, say like in a bases loaded situation, and oh my God, like here's what I hate the most um about guys that always try to swing for the fence with bases loaded. So I feel like that like what I'm about to say, this is like a baseball sin where you strike out with the bases loaded. I mean, if somebody does that, like if somebody does that, like if they strike out with the bases loaded, like it pisses me off because like you just gave away a chance to you could have at least got one run in. Like if you could get like a fly ball, it'd be a sac fly, or ball hit up the middle, that's 1 or 2 runs scored, or you find a good ball in the alley, that's 3 runs, you clear the bases. And I feel like I feel if for the players that are coming up, they should be focusing more on being like sound hitters instead of just sticking to one, just a one talent. Like, yeah, like it's great if you're a power hitter, but it's also great if you don't strike out a lot. So and like,
Exactly.
yeah, just you saying that, yeah, it's best to have those 2 talents where you could be someone that can square up a baseball, or someone that can hit for power, or someone that like someone that does hit bloops, and the, like, you have Texas leaguers in the field. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that should be trained, or that should be instilled in the mind of softball players and baseball players nowadays. But
I agree.
yeah, I just wanted to give my take on that. But yeah, well, Kayla, we're gonna wrap up pretty soon. A few more questions that I want to ask is, so as far as professional softball and like the professional softball circuit, how has that been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Oh, it's definitely been impacted. Like, it's impacted everybody across the country. So with the NPF, they were supposed to start their season,
Mm,
uh, I think a month ago.
mm,
So knowing that COVID-19 has been so serious and the NPF hasn't started, just goes to show that this pandemic is affecting professional softball worldwide. I know that there are some teams who are starting to practice, but they are having a social distancing rule along their guidelines, whichever country that they're in, that they are doing, the 6 foot rule, no social contact, everybody keeping their distance. So it's
Like no high
definitely impacting
fives,
the
no
sport.
fist
No,
bumps,
yeah.
something like that.
Like, I mean, in California, they're starting, like, certain sports get to, you know, play or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but the crazy thing is that, like, even just working out, because I'm an athlete of exclusive speed,
Mhm.
which is based out of the Bay Area. Um, Even just with our workouts, there's a lot of criticism of the group sizes that we have, um, when we go to these workouts, all across the Bay Area, and it just goes to show that this pandemic is really affecting the way that athletes live their lives and working out and participating, just because you need 2 people
Right.
to practice regardless. Some sports you need 3, to make it a little bit easier. So social distancing has been a little bit problematic, but we've definitely made it work. I feel like if you can make it work and you have less excuses about you not working, then I think that you can make ends meet. I know a lot of athletes that I know are still like grinding, still working hard, not necessarily, sitting on the couch, getting big, but uh, yeah, I know a lot of athletes that are working hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it is pretty tough on athletes just knowing that, being an athlete, that's their day job. And,
Hmm.
if you're not working your day job, is, you're not getting paid, like you're not fulfilling your responsibilities of your contractual obligations. And
Hmm.
yeah, I feel for athletes because, again, like I mentioned earlier in the show, they do live these extravagant lifestyles, but right now they don't have the opportunity to do that because they're either quarantined or they're just waiting on the word from their boss man, or like the league official, on like when will I be able to play again. And yeah, and like it's been leveling up. There's, like, with some of the states reopening, California, like I think a few days ago, Gavin Newsom said that he's willing to lift the ban for sports in California to play just without any fans. And yeah, I feel like for
Which
the
is
next,
lame.
yeah. So, but
Which is lame. Like, come on. It was funny when they were about to say, "Oh yeah, like we're gonna do March Madness with no fans." I was like,
yeah, that's no, like sport,
"What?" I was
like
like,
sports
"Basketball
should
is
make
all about the commotion of the
exactly,
crowd
exactly.
and people getting amped up when
Hmm.
people are shooting free throws." Like, I was like, "That's not gonna work. That's not how athletes like work. Like, we have to have some type of extra, um what do you call it, like extra, um
Like madness or
something
extra
else. Like, you have
extra
to have
amp.
something else.
Yeah,
You can't just like that's practice.
yeah, like
That's practice when
it
you
does feel
just your
weird.
coach and the other in like in scrimmaging and stuff like that. That's not a game.
Hmm.
The game is with the fans. The game is with the extracurriculars going on. I mean, shoot, in the regionals that I've played in, I have not even been able to hear my coach sometimes over in the coach's box because it was
Right.
so loud during an at bat. So it's not the dynamic of sports, and I feel like if it's the safety of the athletes, make it that, but don't necessarily make it a revenue cause, like a causation, of not having these athletes have any
Yeah,
fans. Like,
yeah. Like, I mean, it does. It would feel weird to watch a baseball game and not hearing any, like,
that's like BP. That's
yeah,
like
like,
pre
yeah, it's
BP. You know,
mm,
like a scrimmage. Like, nobody, us athletes, we got to take like the game serious. And
you need that extra energy behind you. Like the
yeah,
great thing about sports fans is that when they go to a game, like when they're cheering their heads off, like they bring that extra energy that the athletes have, and the athletes, they could build off that energy and that intensity like with their play. And just having no fans at all, I mean, it's gonna feel weird. I
You're
guess,
not feeding off of anything.
yeah. And like I could say, I've been, like NASCAR actually returned a few days ago, and like yeah, like even though like NASCAR is pretty loud, you can't really get the full aspect of how the fans are reacting. But the fact that there's no fans at the racetrack, even though like yeah, like it's great that they've been able to go back racing and doing it for real. But I don't know, like just without fans, even though you probably can't see them or hear them as much over the loud engines, it still feels weird that there aren't any fans there, or they don't bring that intensity to the track with them. And I don't know, it's just a strange atmosphere to be in. But
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. I don't like it.
yeah.
Just I don't know. Like let it pass and then try to somewhat go back to normal.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily know why this pandemic is so extreme. Just because there have been outbreaks in the past. I mean, there's been the Ebola outbreak, the
Mhm.
H1N1, swine flu.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily know why this is so crazy to a point where regular life doesn't seem attainable
Mhm.
or even like in the near future. But hey, I don't know. Some people say it's conspiracy theories. Some people say it's the government. I don't know. All I know is that I'm healthy. There
Mhm.
was one point where I thought I was sick and I got tested and it was negative. So I don't know. But
Um
I was scared.
mhm.
I was scared though because it's like if you have a cough, then you got COVID. So I
Mhm.
had this weird cough, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get tested. I wouldn't recommend it. It's horrible. They stick two cotton swabs so far up your nose it tickles your brain, and then they
Oh,
swab the back of
wait,
your throat.
wait, I thought it was through the mouth. Is that the nose?
No, you do both nostrils and the
Oh,
throat. Yeah, it's
oh my
horrible.
God. Oh man.
And I did it in my car. So I was in
Oh,
my car. This they stuck it, and I was like, I'm never doing this
ooh.
again.
Ugh.
I was like, I hope I'm negative at this point.
Yeah. I mean, oh man, I thought the virus is still bad, but the treatment even sounds worse. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, and that's it's not even really a rapid test. You don't get results
hmm,
for like 24 to 48 hours.
hmm,
So the rapid test is like so expensive and you have to go to a hospital for it. And also, hospitals are turning you away to a point where you have to have all these symptoms and you have to be old.
hmm,
Like I went to Kaiser and I said my symptoms and they were like, "Oh, well, you're young, so
hmm.
just deal with it and take a, Mucinex." I was like, "What? What if I have COVID?"
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Last question. So, of course, like you already got your set plan. You're playing professional baseball. Like you're also training young kids, and yeah, like, so are there like any future goals in softball, fitness, or like how about music? Because I know you like to sing, so just like, is there any
And talent.
future goals for you at all in the future?
So currently right now I'm working to get into med school.
Okay.
So,
Oh, yeah, MCAT. Okay,
um,
all right.
I just finished majority of my classes that I need in order to prepare me for the exam. Um, that's kind of like my goal right now. I am training kids. Once the world opens back up, I would love to go and play again, just because I know I'm going to have this kind of wiggle room between taking the exam and getting into schools. I'm still going to have time to go play at least 2 more seasons.
Okay.
So the future in softball is probably a couple more seasons, and then if I get into med school, which is I will get into med school, then I'll start that process. You know, changing my life and becoming an adult, as I like to say. Because when I go play softball, I still feel like a kid. I don't feel like an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I love the game. It feels like I'm back, 14 years old, still playing the game that I love. When it comes to regards to singing, I mean, I took professional singing lessons when I was like 3 years old. My first love was actually singing, and then I chose up on sports when I started getting competitive, because I felt like singing was always going to be there. So, and I started like recording at like 13. Then I stopped that because then I started getting more competitive. So, in retrospect to that, I think singing is always going to be there. The opportunity and the resources that I have and connections within music.
And you plan to release an album? Or
Well, I have a song that I'm on with a Bay Area artist. I'm just doing ad libs and
Oh,
stuff.
really?
Yeah. I'll send you the link. It's not necessarily an appropriate song, but
like send it anyway. Like, I'll put it in the description so viewers could go.
Yeah. But I always shoot for the stars when it comes to my occupations. I've never been somebody that said like, oh, like you can't do something. I've always wanted to do everything, or just, pick the hardest thing, go for that first, which is med school right now. And then after that, figure it out. But, like maybe because I just ended school, so I'm a little less stressed out. I may start getting into, like posting some covers and stuff like that, because I am very critical. I've always been critical on the way my voice sounds, just because it has changed since I was, 2, because that's when I started singing. So it's definitely changed, and it's about, being acclimated to your sound and accepting like the voice that you have. But that's always there. I honestly think that I could start that whenever. But yeah, a couple more seasons for softball, but really right now my focus is trying to get into med school, and also giving this time to my kids to train them, and so that they can get the best opportunities with me while I'm around, because I have Bay Area clients and I also have SoCal clients. So like my SoCal clients right now, they're like, hey, when are you coming back? I'm like, don't worry, I'll be there in like a week. And then, I have my Bay Area clients that I've been working with, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want you to leave. So yeah.
Oh yeah, Kayla, that's awesome. And yeah, we're gonna wrap up pretty there. And like Kayla, it's been a thin slice, and that like I like to say, like it's been a thin slice of heaven. So yeah, so yeah, like man, yeah, it's definitely awesome. Like it's definitely sounds like you got a lot going on for you, both softball, medical school, training. Like yeah, like I mean, like you got. Like you got that vision, girl. Like I'm definitely proud of you. Like
Just put it all on my head. Put it all.
Yeah, you came a long way from from when we first met, and yeah, it's definitely awesome to hear that you're still doing pretty good for yourself, and yeah, like wish you the best for the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, but anyway, that's been our episode of the Real Deal Bros podcast. Again, I have my guest Kayla Taylor, amazing Kayla Taylor, and yeah, definitely check it out, and like check it out our Spotify, and also like, comment, and subscribe on our videos. And yeah, Kayla, thanks again for coming on. I've been Philip Hall, and as always, make sure to keep it real.